James Bond doesn't seem to like the latest from Aston Martin. In fact, he hasn't been seen driving a modern production Aston since 2008's Quantum of Solace, 4 movies ago. And the truth is, in the supercar realm, Aston is a bit of a forgotten legend. It seems like every second video I see is a McLaren, a Lambo, Bugatti, or a Ferrari. Even a 911 gets more showtime. But for Aston, it feels like they rarely take the spotlight. And my guess for why this is simple. They're decent cars in an indecent time. Popular cars today are indecent. Now by indecent, what I really mean are curvy, sharp, extravagant, unrestrained. Indecent cars seem to sacrifice all form for function and to one-up the competition on the spec sheets. We're talking about downforce, drag coefficient, lateral grip. But indecency comes also in another form. Unbridled exuberance, dipped in a sea of opulence, whether that's crystal lights or a headliner of stars. I think it's safe to say that high-end manufacturers are racing to the top of the indecency charts. But Aston is different. It's hard to believe, but the DB11 has been in production since 2016. In 2016, it was clear that Aston knew they needed a shakeup. Look at the design. Aside from the front grille and the overall shape, the car is pretty unique for Aston. The front lights are a nice evolution from the DB9. The creases and cutouts down the side slim out the profile and relieve the apparent weight the DB9 was carrying. The intake riding on the C-pillar leads air out through the rear lid. And at the rear, Aston took what they did with the Vanquish and ran with it. A contoured deck lid with a pseudo spoiler. To me, the most striking thing is the accented strake has migrated forward into the wheel arch. Those 5 or 6 inches make a huge difference. I always appreciate a company trying something new, but it doesn't work for me. For such a clean, classy, and mature car, this looks like Aston took one piece of advice from Robert Melville, the Senna's designer. That being said, when the roof is body colored and the simulated double strake at the wheel arch and C-pillar is more apparent, it makes a lot more sense. Again, it's a small change, but a big impact. It's one of the few times I really don't like a car with a factory blacked out roof. Usually I can take it or leave it, save for the LaFerrari, which needs it. But here, body colored feels like the way to go. But no matter what you think about the roof or the strake, it's a clean, sharp GT. Less gaudy than a Wraith or a Continental GT. Not as sporty as a McLaren GT or a Huracan. It's a decent design when decency is in decline. Call this whatever you like, but decent seems like the wrong word. It's wild and extreme. Beautiful? No. Cool? Sure. Same goes for this. See, at a time when clout is measured in Instagram likes, the gentleman's car seems like it's losing its edge. Flash is winning. Cars are orange, lime green, bright blue, sometimes pink. How many lime green Astons have you seen? The Instagram supercar mold doesn't fit Aston. They're too understated, too classy. They're rarely in the conversation for the performance stat awards, except the mighty DBX707. But that being said, on the other end of the spectrum, stately vehicles like the Rolls or Bentleys are still in the mix, but they sell a different story. Opulence at its finest. The truth is, from the outside, the DB11 doesn't have the presence of something like a Rolls, and the interior is a major misstep for me. The infotainment is last-gen Mercedes, and build quality hasn't won over many critics. But besides all that, it's just not the prettiest. In fact, I don't really like it at all. It seems like a design from 2010. A lot of buttons mashed into one place, an ugly screen, an old infotainment controller. Even the steering wheel is a bit strange. Thankfully, Aston knows where they're lagging, and they've unveiled a plan for changes across the range this year, which includes updated styling and a revamped infotainment system. Truth is, this is needed more than it looks. While the DBX has been, expectedly, bolstering sales for Aston, the DB11 has been on a steady decline since launch. And that's such a shame because it is a handsome car. And while I can understand a man's love for a DB5, I don't understand why Bond wouldn't give this a chance. Why more supercar builders don't have a DB11 in their fleet. It's rare to find this balance of sport, elegance, and class in one car. To me, on the decency spectrum, the DB11's closest rivals are the Roma, which I do think is some of Ferrari's best work in recent times, and the 911. Porsche also doesn't stray far from home when it comes to design. A standard 911 or even turbo remains classy and clean. We know the Porsche is going to win every drive comparison, but without the rabid following of buyers, the DB11 remains the more exclusive and unique choice. That being said, to me the 911 is perfect, a true tale of mastery over design and engineering. Meanwhile, the Aston, it has a little bit of work to do. Thankfully, although indecency is reigning supreme, if that's what you're after, Aston hasn't completely left you hanging. The DBS debuted in 2018 as the replacement for the also forgotten Vanquish. It was better than the DB11 in every way. Front to back, the DBS was given its own identity. Revised lights and hood vents, a revised rear with a new light bar, a more aggressive diffuser and quad exhaust. They even fitted it with an indecently large grille and lower bumper intakes for the Instagram crowd. Of course, power was bumped up from the DB11 and it reigns as the fastest Aston GT ever, and third fastest overall, bested only by the Vulcan and Valkyrie. So if the DB11 and DBS look and drive well, and the interior updates are on the way, what else can they do? Well, they are already initiating their game plan. Called the Second Century Plan, then CEO Andy Palmer planned to diversify the range into new vehicle categories while boosting production. An SUV is an unfortunate necessity in today's landscape, and they've taken care of that, even though I don't think it's a looker from the front, especially considering the competition. Strengthening brand image with a foray into F1 was a good move, and although they lost Vettel, they gained Alonso. So building the range with Indecent Cars is the only logical next step, and they have that covered. The Vulcan was a first move, produced in 2015, and currently the Valkyrie is here to take on the most indecent of hypercars. But the home run hit will be the Valhalla. Hypercar looks, but still drivable, still accessible. It has all the markings of today's indecents. Top-mounted exhaust, butterfly doors, rear mid-engined, massive intakes and vents, F1-inspired curves. It even has Remax source battery tech. It sits unbelievably low and wide. And then there's that rear that makes the AMG 1 look tame. This time out, Aston isn't interested in a decent car, simple or restrained. They're ripping up the rulebook. But not entirely. The truth is, while this is one of the most indecent cars Aston has ever made, it still retains the things we love about Aston. The hood is clean and unfussy. Front lights are a natural evolution from the DBS. The grille, while huge, isn't flanked with intakes and winglets. Even where things get more interesting like the sides and the rear, it all makes sense. Each line is in the right place. No out-of-place swoops and curves to squeeze out that extra inconsequential pound of downforce. The Valhalla makes sense as Aston's future. Something brand new that doesn't forget where it came from. This may be the revolution we've been waiting for. The inevitable progression of Andy Palmer's Second Century Plan. For years we've watched Aston be the hero's choice, because decency is the virtue of a hero. But if we wait long enough, we may see Aston become the villain.